All right, so as I said, this is our quiz 2 study guide. And we've got all of these are short answer. So we're looking for the length of AD. All right, that's distance on a number line. So we said this week that the distance on the number line is equal to the absolute value of the difference of the coordinates. So in this case, we need the length of AD. So if A is located at -7, we're going to take -7 and we're going to subtract 8 from it. And -7 minus 8 is -15. And the absolute value of -15 is equal to 15. So your distance from A to D is 15 units. On this second question, they're asking you what segment is congruent to AC. And congruent means the same. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the length of AC. All right. And AC is equal to the absolute value of -6 minus 0, which is the absolute value of -6, which is equal to 6. So if AC is equal to 6, and we need a segment that's congruent to AC, we need another segment that's equal to 6. So in this case, I'm looking at BC, it's only 2 units. B to D is 4 units. But look at B to E. All right, B to E is equal to the absolute value of -2 minus 4. And -2 minus 4 is -6. And the absolute value of -6 is equal to 6. So what segment is congruent to AC? That's segment BE. All right, problem number 3. If Z is the midpoint of RT, if Z is the midpoint of RT, then Z is in the middle of R and T. So we're going to put tick marks on here. And those tick marks mean that RZ is congruent to ZT. And if that's the case, we can solve for X. Because the question is, what are X, RZ, and RT? So the first thing we're going to do is solve for X. Now, 4X minus 28 is equal to 24. So if we add 28 to each side, then 4X is equal to 52. And if we divide both sides by 4, then our X is equal to 13. So there's your first part of the question. X is equal to 13. Now we need RZ. Well, if R to Z is congruent to Z to T, then RZ is going to be equal to 24. But let's check that answer. So RZ is equal to 4 times 13 minus 28, which is 52 minus 28, which is 24. So our R to Z is equal to 24. That checks. And then they ask you for R to T. Well, if R to Z is 24 and Z to T is 24, then R to T is going to be equal to 24 times 2, which is 48. So here's your X equals. Here's your RZ equals. And here's your RT. Number 4 asks you which point is the midpoint of AE. The midpoint of AE, we noted that yesterday as X at the midpoint. And it was equal to the sum of the points. We got -6 plus 8 divided by 2. Remember, midpoint is middle. So if we're finding the middle of AE, we're going to add the two values together, divide by 2. That'll give us an average value, which will give us the midpoint. So -6 plus 8 is 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So which point is the midpoint? That's going to be point D. Problem number 5, if T is the midpoint of SU, if T is in the middle of SU, then we're going to add tick marks. That tells us that ST is the same or congruent to TU. So now we need to find ST, TU, and STU. That means we've got to solve for X first. So our 9X is equal to 6X plus 30. We can subtract 6X from each side. So 3X equals 30. And then divide both sides by 3. And we get an X that's equal to 10. So I'm going to go back to S to T is going to equal or going to be equal to 9 times 10, which is 90. T to U is equal to 6 times 10 plus 30, which is 60 plus 30, which is 90 as well. And then S to U. S to U is going to be equal to 90 times 2, which is 180. So here's our S to T, T to U, and S to U. All right, so I'm going to have to handwrite number 6 in here. You've got it on your paper. But it's asking for the midpoint of AE. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Midpoint of AE. But there's not an E on the number line, so we're going to assume that they're asking for the midpoint of AB. So the midpoint, or we can change, let's just change that point B out there to an E. So the midpoint of AE would be equal to the sum of the coordinates, -7 plus 8, And then we're going to divide it by 2. And negative 7 plus 8 is 1 divided by 2 equals 0.5. So the midpoint of AE would be 0.5. Okay, number 7. You're asked to find the coordinates of the midpoint of the segment whose endpoints are H is at 8,2, K is at 610. So what we're doing now, we're finding the midpoint on the coordinate plane. So we need to find the midpoint of our X, and then we need to find the midpoint of our Y's. So we got to do the midpoint formula twice. So I'm a little bit out of room here. I'm going to shrink this because you guys can see yours better than I can see mine when I shrink it. So for number 7, we've got our X at the midpoint is equal to 8 plus 6 divided by 2. And our Y at the midpoint is equal to 2 plus 10 divided by 2. So our X at the midpoint is going to be equal to 8 plus 6 divided by 2, which is 7. And our Y at the midpoint, 2 plus 10 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. So our midpoint is going to be located at 7, 6. It's the average of your X's and the average of your Y's. Number 8, same concept. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of the segment whose endpoints are. So our X at the midpoint is going to be equal to the 7 plus the 2 divided by 2. And our Y at the midpoint is equal to 7 plus 3. I'm sorry, our X at the midpoint, that's 10 plus 2, not 7 plus 2. And our Y at the midpoint is going to be 7 plus 3 divided by 2. So our X at the midpoint is 12 divided by 2, which is 6. Our Y at the midpoint is equal to 10 divided by 2, which is equal to 5. So our midpoint is located at 6, 5. Now, numbers 9 and 10, read carefully. You're told on number 9 that M is the midpoint of RS. The coordinates of S are 10, 10. What are the coordinates of R? All right, so we're trying to find an endpoint here. So we're going to label these points. I'm going to label this X sub M and Y sub M. I'm going to label the coordinates of S at X sub 1, Y sub 1. What are the coordinates of R? We're looking for our X sub 2 and our Y sub 2. So the formula that was in your notes from yesterday, it said that X at the middle was equal to X sub 1 plus X sub 2 divided by 2. So our X at the middle is 9. Our 9 is equal to X sub 1, which is 10, plus x sub 2 divided by 2. Then our y at the middle is 8, and our 8 is equal to our y sub 1, which is 10, plus our y sub 2 divided by 2. Now, the first step to solve these equations is going to be to multiply by 2. Multiply both sides of the equation by 2. When you do that, these 2's cancel. So we get 18 equals 10 plus x sub 2. And we can subtract 10 from each side. So 8 is equal to our x sub 2. Same process to find y sub 2. Multiply both sides of the equation by 2. The 2's on the right-hand side cancel. 2 times 8 is 16 equals 10 plus y sub 2. And then subtract 10 from each side. So 6 is equal to our y sub 2. So now we go back to where they asked for the coordinates of R, which was the other endpoint. And R is going to be located at 8, 6. So we're going to do the same thing for number 10. You're told T is the midpoint of CD. The coordinates of D are 8, 20. What are the coordinates of C? So here's our X at the middle, our Y at the middle. Here's our X sub 1 and our Y sub 1. And we're looking for X sub 2 and Y sub 2. So again, our can't see that far. Our X at the middle is 8 is equal to our X sub 1, which is 8, plus X sub 2 divided by 2. Our Y at the middle, which is 15, is equal to Y sub 1, which is 20, plus Y sub 2 divided by 2. So your math steps are the same. Multiply both sides of the equation by 2. 16 equals 8 plus X sub 2. And subtract 8 from each side. So 8 equals our X sub 2. For our Y sub 2, we're going to multiply both sides by 2. The 2's cancel. 2 times 15 is 30 equals 20 plus Y sub 2. And then subtract 20 from each side. And 10 is equal to Y sub 2. So our coordinates of point C are 8, 10. And last but not least, we've got problems 11 and 12. and we're going to be using the distance formula. And when we use the distance formula, we talked about it the other day, that it's always a good idea to label your points. So this is our x sub 1 and our y sub 1, our x sub 2 and our y sub 2. Please remind me tomorrow when you start your quiz to put the distance formula on the wall. You don't have to memorize the distance formula. You'll have access to it when you take the EOC, but remind me to put it up on the wall. So I'm going to do the math for number 11 right down here. And find the distance between points PQ. So PQ equal to big square root. We've got x sub 2 minus x sub 1. 3 minus 8 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1. 8 minus 2 squared. Which is equal to the square root of 3 minus 8 is negative 5 squared is 25. 8 minus 2 is 6 squared is 36. $25 plus 36 is the square root of 61. And it says round to the nearest tenth. So 61 is sitting on my screen. I'm going to push the square root button. And then since I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I can push second fix 1. And I'm going to get 7.8. So our PQ is equal to 7.8. And number 12, we're finding the distance between P and Q again. Just different values. Again, label x1, y1, x sub 2, and y sub 2. For number 12, again, we're finding PQ. So we got x sub 2 minus x sub 1, 8 minus 1, squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1. Our y sub 2 is 5 minus 7 squared. 8 minus 1 is 7 squared is 49. 5 minus 7 is negative 2 squared is 4. We got the square root of 49 plus 4, which is the square root of 53. And we hit the square root button. 7.28 to the nearest tenth again is 7.9. So number 12, PQ equal to 7.9. Number 11, P to Q equal to 7.8. Anybody have any questions on that study guide? Square root of 53? 53 square root 7.28. Oh yeah, what am I doing? 7.3, right? Yeah, sorry about that. $7.3. Yes. Yes, ma'am.